Thank you, Dawn. It's a pleasure today to have our first speaker series for 2016, and this is going to be a great one because Claire, by popular demand, is coming back from the program that she presented in February, which was so interesting. And I've had the great pleasure of working with her putting together the presentation. She's done all the research at the Archives and Records Center, which of course is the reason it's here, so we can go and do research. And she's spent hours and hours pulling together from probate and other sources information. This one is particularly special, but I'll let her share as to why that is the case. But it's been a delight to work with Claire. She is a past president of the Landmarks Commission here in Hermann. She is an expert on historic preservation, previously headed up the State Historic Preservation Office in Jefferson City. Hails from the New York Finger Lakes area, and we're so pleased to have her as a resident for the last, how many decades? Quite a few. Don't even want to count. So as a result, I just think it's tremendous to be able to share the history that she has so faithfully researched and we're able to share with the community. So with that, Claire, I want to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy. I hope you can all hear me. I'm wearing this fancy microphone. I'd like to thank the Gaston County Historical Society for humoring me by allowing me to do yet another talk about my favorite little subject, the characters that peopled early Hermann. Jane Austen famously wrote that her work was done on a little piece of ivory, no bigger than 2 inches with a fine brush, and that's very humbling. So I think what I'm doing is just a slice of Hermann, and Hermann is a slice of a bigger picture and a bigger picture, so it's, that's what it is, but I love doing this, and I appreciate the support. Again, the support of the Society, Archives, the Dearborn Educational Foundation, and Deutschland State Historic Site, especially Cindy, who's been a colleague and a wonderful PowerPoint technician. Without her, I'd be doing hand puppets. So here we are. Today, I'm talking about a property and a cast of characters pretty dear to my heart. Since I've been in Hermann, I've lived here, Carl Schroeder's house on East Hill, Franklin Street, and it was happenstance that I ended up in Hermann and ended up with that house. I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the architecture, the details, the way he put the property together. Just everything was so perfect. I just loved it, and for years I tried to find out about the Schroeders. And I had a good deal of difficulty, despite the fact that I had quite a bit of inventory that remained with the house, papers and jewels and so forth. But finally, I think I've come to grips with his life, and would like to share it with you. We go forward, Cindy? Oh, first, go backwards. Forgot to say, this is a snippet of Schroeder's bird's eye view of Hermann. And as I said, there's the Schroeder house way up there on Franklin Street. The core of the community is here. You'll notice that a lot of these streets never were paved. There's no Franklin that goes all the way down here. So it's just an early artistic view of what Hermann looked like around 1869. Okay. This is a fabulous photo from the Edward Kemper collection. It's featured in the book Little Germany on Missouri. Anna Hess and Dolph Schroeder collaborated on that book. Of course, Kemper was a relative of Anna Hess. Here we are again, Schroeder House. You can see it's isolated from the rest of the community. You get a better idea of the topography of Hermann here. It's way up, it's on a hill, but it's in a hill. I really think Carl was somewhat of a crazy artist. He had to dig out into the hillside to create his little property nestled in the hillside. And it's very, very charming. I love this photo because it looks to me just so European. It's so dark. You can see the contrasting colors. And here is a barn, a half-timbered barn that's no longer there. It was at that time. I knew that Carl was a Mason, was evident from looking at the house. I didn't know where he was from other than Germany. Could we go back now, Cindy? More recently, I found a trove of letters, and this is perfect. The sender, Johann Schroeder, Carl's brother, Stockhausen by Sondershausen in Thuringia, Deutschland. So that's his territory. Let's go on to the third one, Cindy. Okay, this is a paper that came with the house. I always knew it was important, but with Ilsa's help, Ilsa's not here today, but you all know this, Ilsa Halter helped me. Essentially, it's a document stating that I know these people, Carl Schroeder and his wife Wilhelmina. Carl is a Maurer in Stockhausen. Maurer is a Mason. And they had a child, September 26, 1852, and they named him Johann Friedrich. This is dated 1854. I think this must have been needed for immigration. Up here, there's a revenue stamp. I didn't know what that was at first, but found some revenue stamps online on sale on eBay, and was able to identify the coat of arms for the Principality of Schwarzburg, Sondershausen. There's another principality, Schwarzburg, Rudolstadt, but this shows that was stamped probably on their way out of the country. And here are some letters that we found more recently, greetings from Sondershausen. Really lovely little piece. Stockhausen, according to Ilsa, was a Gut, and a Gut, you think of their Gut, think of being good. The first definition of Gut is something blessed or a good thing, but the second definition is an estate. And Stockhausen was an estate, presumably with an aristocrat of some sort running the estate and with others working for him. And that's what Carl would have been doing in Stockhausen. We move on. Again, some more lovely stationery. This is from letters written in the 1890s, back in the home country. And Sondershausen is evidently a much larger and substantial town or city. And Thuringia, I guess you would call a state. It's hard to pigeonhole the German municipalities, but that's pretty much it. Lots of big stone buildings. Okay, Cindy. The 1854 date on that document suggested that he was coming over here soon, but I could never find out from the record books that he had actually bought property here. Not until 1861 did I find that R.C. Schlender had deeded property to Charles. And that property was lots 50, 52, 54, and 56, East 3rd. I found, though, in the city trustee files, in the assessment records, that Carl was paying tax on several lots, including lots 9 and 11 on East 6th. Unfortunately, that land is now occupied by Hermann Lumber. I don't know what was there or what he would have been doing there, but he was paid property tax on those. He didn't own the lots, and he was paid property tax on the East Hill lots. But that was in 1855. This is really exciting, I think, for me. More information from the meeting of the Town Board of Trustees. Here, they are ordaining that the following accounts be allowed. You see there's several people doing things, digging gutters, repairing fences, and then there's my down here, Charles Schroeder for masonry on the Front Street Bridge. And I don't know if anyone here is old enough or has lived here long enough to remember the beautiful stone arch bridges. There were two in Hermann. Ruth remembers? Well, I don't know exactly when they were torn down. Two fabulous stone bridges, both over Free Creek. One here, just next to what was the Crop Brewery and now is Hermann Winery, and one on Market Street, again across Free Creek. I imagine they were torn down in the 50s or 60s by the Highway Department. I don't know the details, but that it would have had to happen before 1966, when the National Historic Preservation Act was passed, that provided a provision, Section 106, that directed federal agencies to consider the impact of their actions on historic and cultural resources. So those are gone, and part of Carl's legacy. I wish we still had those to appreciate. I found, I think, 4 different payments for Carl in the trustees' records. I think 2 for $22 each, 1 for $12, and 1 for $7, so about $63, which is about a good 2 months' work at the $1 a day rate set by the city for day laborers. Oh, this is the wrong clicker, sorry. Voila. Here's the house. You can't see the whole house very clearly, but it's part stone, part brick. You see the stone. Very fanciful, beautiful stone arch, the rosette, lovely, really grave-type steely set in a corner of the stone courtyard that's back this way. Another rosette over a door into the stone portion. The brick portion has rosettes set in the corner of stone blocks, and then differing motifs, usually with more rosettes, a wreath, and a shell. So a lot of work went into building this property, and you can't see it, but at the edge of each stone threshold, a little rosette carved in the stone. So, as I said, I think he was a little bit of a crazy artist, in a good sense, a very good sense. And here you see that he, part of that colorful look, the dental course under the eaves consists of glazed bricks. So they're blackish and give a little contrast. For years on tour, people would say that this was his wife. He had buried her in the corner. You know, I think you need to be careful of listening to all of the local lore, because that's, it's obviously part of his aesthetic. He just wanted it to be artistic and unusual. Van Ravensway, and I don't think he was old enough. Excuse me, Greg.
Who is that figurine?
She's just a part
It's
of
not
his.
anybody that anybody recognized.
No,
Okay.
she's just a part of his.
Looks a little bit, Indian, or with a turban on her head.
Well, actually, it's not a turban; it's a fillet. It's sort of a Greek
Oh, okay.
look.
Greek. Okay.
Classic. Dan Raven's Way, who wasn't old enough to have talked to Carl, I don't think, says that Carl called this his Schloss, and that it was his ruin. Well, I have to take issue with that. Schloss means castle. So for Carl, this was his castle, a fanciful little castle, and not as grand as the properties where he worked in Stockhausen, but I like to think that it's his castle, and a bit of a folly. Now, I'm not handling this right. This is a building above a cellar that used to be a half-timbered structure. It was redone in the 30s or something with just board and batten type framing, sheeting rather. The local legend is that he lived there while he built the house. So that makes some degree of sense because he had to live somewhere while he did all the work to create the stone and the brick. And it's my theory that the stone part was done first. The details are simpler. Stone would have been readily available, and it was his bailiwick, and then the brick added later. It's also verified to a certain extent by the floor levels on the interior. You can see that the floor and the stone portion is lower than it was originally. Okay, let's go to Cindy. As I said, the house came with a lot of, it's a little mini museum. It came with all this stuff. Wonderful things. These are only a few of Carl's tools. Various chisels, little hammers, mallets. This is a wooden handle with an iron top, probably used for stippling. It's very difficult to even lift that, it's so heavy. And this from the internet, showing how this type of mallet might have been used to pound on the head of a chisel, and this fellow is creating a line in his cornice. He's dressed very nicely for a mason. And to the side, you see a tombstone that he's also working on. I think Carl may have worked on some of the tombstones, but there's no direct evidence of that. So, if you read Gottfried Duden, in his postscript, he talks about tools and implements and advises immigrants on what they should bring or what they could buy here or where to go and get it for the cheapest price. I would suspect that Carl brought many of his tools that were his favorites and then perhaps bought others or made them himself. At which point, demonstration. This is cut from one log. You can see it's just cut out of a log, and it's been used for pounding on something. I don't know what. But it's, to me, this is a caveman type. Something L.A. Oop would use, but I doubt that that's what it was used for. Okay, let's move on, Cindy. Carl had a lot of obstacles to cover. He was here by 1855. 1861, he enlists in the Gaston County Home Guard to support the Union effort. He musters out in 1863. By the time he gets home, his wife is either dying or soon after dying. His wife, Wilhelmina, leaving him alone with his son, Fritz. With a young son and a lot to do, he needed to remarry, and Bertha Zeller was available. Julius, her husband, had recently died. She had some children, which is hard to imagine in that tiny little house on East Hill. But apparently things started falling apart fairly quickly. And by 1865, a separation document is filed. Here's the first several pages. It doesn't say anything about a divorce, but when I first saw this, I thought, oh my golly, it's a restraining order. But I don't think it's quite that either. Let's see, it's an agreement between Carl Schroeder, the first part, and Bertha, the second part. Whereas diverse disputes and unhappy differences have arisen between the said party, the first and his wife, for which reason they have consented and agreed to live separate and apart from each other during their natural lives. Sounds like a divorce, but it doesn't say divorce. And it goes on, and then the most astonishing part is what Bertha got to take with her. She got to take a bed and bedding, a table, 2 chairs, a bureau, a lounge, and 2 beehives. I mean, I think she literally must have cleaned Carl out. The document further went on to say that Carl could never visit her, never text or sext her, he just had to stay away from her. So, obviously problems there. Can we go back some? Well, that wasn't enough for him, I guess. He tried again in 1871. He married someone named Emily Schuth, and actually that should be S-C-H-U-T-H. I couldn't find anything about her. There are no Schuths in Gascony County. But apparently, once again, things went awry. Could we go forward, Cindy, to the next one? Out of the blue, Charles transfers his property to his son Fritz. Just deeds it over, seemingly an indication of problems to come. We'll go back, Cindy. And in 1875, he petitions for divorce from Emily, and he lets it all out. You think of people being more genteel in those days. Well, the first salvo was that she had absented herself from the home, that he'd done his husbandly duties, but she just left. And then she shacked up with a fellow in Osage County. And then he learned from others that she was pregnant. And so then the final salvo, he states that he has not been with her since a certain date and has not had sexual intercourse with her since that time. So, obviously he didn't want to get burdened with bringing up that child or letting her get control on his property. It's sort of fascinating. And I don't know, I think Charles was a good guy. I think he just had some romantic issues. I love this that Cindy found. Who does not love wine, wife, and song will be a fool for his life long. That's good. Okay. Charles was always having money problems. I don't know why. I don't think he was a big spender. It's hard to say. But in 1876, he gets a promissory note from Maria Wechter for $100. Apparently, he'd forgotten since 1871 when he deeded his property to Fritz. He just signs his name here, so the document has to be redone the same day to Charles and Fritz. So he was an artist. He wasn't into bureaucratic documentation. Anyway, I was very curious about this Maria Wechter, because at this time you would expect most women to have the funds to loan, let alone enough funds to run a household. Maria was the widow of Martin Nosson, who was a blacksmith. He was a blacksmith, and he was a after his death, she remarried to a day laborer, Louis Wechter, who was about 10 years her junior. They built this house on First Street, and this is where Clark Calhoun and Clark Cancer live today. Her probate file she had back in 1878 showed that she belonged to several individuals, not just to Carl Fritz. I don't know where she got her money. Another question, but she had money and she used it the way all men in town were using it to make a little profit. So she was a little bit ahead of her time there. Very interesting individual. And another unhappy romance. Maria files for divorce from Louis, and she says he's a drunk, and essentially his bathroom habits are not good. Louis fires back, and he says, well, like everyone, I enjoy a drink or two, but I'm not a drunk. And then he says, all she cares about is money. So,
Where's the house?
this used to be the antique place. It's across from the courthouse. Clark Mills.
Yeah, you've been there.
Okay, let's move this in. This is a little bit of a jump maybe, but for years I've looked at this property, which is now the bank bar and shoulder streets that way to the county. And I wondered about these rosettes. And who did those? It must have been Charles, but I had no evidence. And you don't see a lot of stone detail work in town. It's unusual. Anyway, Frank Rebsamen built this property in about finished it in about 1883. He had his barber shop here. And then I found out in the Advertiser Courier that Frank and Fritz played together in the Apostle String Band. So I thought, aha, there's a link. This is all hypothesis, but I could see Frank saying to Fritz, oh, those stone rosettes are pretty cool. Could your dad fix up some for me? That's all hypothetical, but they are virtually identical to the ones on Carl Schroeder house. Okay, I have a question for the audience, as usual. This was a barber shop. The Advisor Courier, soon after the building was built, noted that Frank had a barber pole that was immense. Does anyone know the history of barber poles? It's a very interesting one, and I knew nothing until talking to Cindy. The red and the white helical design, it represents bloodletting, the red, and the white for the gauze bandages. From medieval times, bloodletting was popular, and barbers did it for many years. There was a French figure, I don't remember his name, who said that surgeons wore the long robe and barbers the short robe as far as surgery. Anyway, and then apparently the blue was added for patriotic reasons later on. So, anyway, just a little sideline. Let's go to the next one, Cindy. Carl was the stone worker. His son Fritz was a violin maker. Another research question to be followed. How did he learn to play the instrument, and how did he learn how to make them? I have some suggestions in a minute, but right now we're just looking at some online resources showing the shop of a violin maker, and you can see many of the same things you would have seen in Fritz's shop, various stages of the violin. But he also did accordions. The historic Hermann now has one in the museum. It's one of his, it's signed, and it was donated. It's very interesting. This is the violin shop in the background. It's to the west of the house itself and its frame. This is misidentified in this Van Waven's way as a shoe shop. It's really a kitchen and smokehouse.
Sorry, for kitchen?
Uh-huh.
You have questions?
Could you tell me about the bass speakers?
Oh, I don't know. This particular violin maker apparently liked math.
Oh, this isn't,
This is not, no.
Good.
In the 50s, Scott Schmidt, who owned the property, did sort of dress up the violin shop for tours. So maybe not quite like this, but it did have any masks. That's just what it is. Again, the inventory that came with the property, violin making tools, an incredible range. This is an internet source. That's not all of his tools, but he probably had them all. Ranging from sort of primitive handmade little awls to tools like these that were manufactured or stamped with the name of the maker. One of my theories is that Fritz had considerable contact with the Rieck family. Now the Rieck family included Ernest, who was a doctor. And you see in the 1850 census he's already 73. Constance, 23, a musician. Charles, 19, a barkeeper. And living separately, Auguste, 22, a dram shopkeeper. Auguste and Constance were instrumental in establishing the Erholung, which is a building that's now part of Frank Van Kamp's B&B there. It's on 2nd Street. It was built for the organization of the Erholung, which promoted theater and music and cultural pursuits. Actually, I'm not sure why we have this here, but Charles, he was sort of the black sheep of the Reed family. He married Bernice Emily Tubner. Fritz apparently was visiting in 1881, probably is visiting Emily, their daughter. Charles went berserk. His wife called the sheriff. The sheriff, who at that time was George Clingy, arrived, and a little brawl took place with Reek slashing the finger of the sheriff, so he had to leave and go for assistance. But Fritz was there to try to help. Charles escaped, but he was caught and rolled, not insane, but put in jail. He was always in difficulties and ended up being placed in an insane asylum in St. Joe, and ended up in some sort of veterans insane place in southern Missouri. So he was not one of the great musicians of the family. Anyway, 1883, Emily marries Fritz, and here's the certificate. Of the Reeks, Constance was probably the most gifted musically. Here he is with his clarinet, a daughter with a cornet, another daughter with a piano, and a son who appears to be cradling a violin in his arm. Constance and Auguste gave up on the Erholung and built the music hall next door on 2nd Street. This exists today, but it has a 2-story porch on the front, so you might not recognize it. But this is a great picture from the Robine. The Robine. buildings, and it's just great with its casement windows. And here, there's much more room for dancing and proffering of beverages. So I think that 2nd Street was becoming sort of the midtown of Hermann. You had the Air Holo, which still operated the music hall with a little more liveliness, and then across the street, the Louisenberg that I talked about at the last talk, if you were here, the brewery and operation of J.C. Beer. So,
The picture says professor, did he teach someplace?
Constance? Oh, he must have. Don't know the answer to where though.
Yeah.
This is my favorite photo. This is in the collection of Historic Hermann. Presumably that's Fritz, although I didn't know he played the cello as well. He was gifted. And I don't know who the other fellows are. I'm wanting one of them to be Frank Ramsden, but I'm not sure which. This is a tintype. Tintypes were very popular for efficient and quick photos. You didn't have to go to a photographic studio and get all gussied up and wait for your photo. These were quick on-the-go photos. You can see there's just a canvas, sort of dirty canvas backdrop hung up, and what looks to be a tent above. So it's possible this could have been taken at a circus event. The Apostle Band, and this is not the Apostle Band, it had 12 members. Some of these could have been in it. Hermann bands played everywhere. On the steamboat, going up the river on a cruise, at the circus, at the various places like the concert hall or the music hall. And the town was very proud of its various bands. When I saw the obituary for Augustus Reek, it mentioned that he'd traveled in Dan Rice's circus, and I thought, well, maybe Fritz could have done something like that. There's lots of music that Fritz penned. I don't think that's the right term for writing musical notation. I don't know that he wrote the music, but he wrote it out for various instruments. You see this is a cornet. We have it for all different instruments. And at the archives, there are 2 booklets that were donated that are all violin pieces. Everything from waltzes to schottisches to cakewalk. And that's another great indicator of how Fritz contributed to music. In Hermann, he also taught music. He didn't just play it. And he didn't just... Here, let's go back for a minute. No, let's go forward. This is another great photo that came with the property. I have to thank Tony Carasella for helping to Photoshop it because it was ripped across the bottom. Here they all are. There's Carl, the patriarch, Fritz, the middle-aged husband, his wife Emily, daughter Bertha, son Charles, and son John. I love the kids' clothes. They're sort of a little Laura Fauntleroy-ish. And Emily is wearing little lace glovelets. But adults all have corsages. I don't know if this was taken for a specific occasion or just the fun of going out for a photograph. Charles is wearing his GAR medal. That's the Grand Army of the Republic. He was a proud veteran. And I guess I've sort of romanticized about Carl. I mean, I like him. He's an artist. He's sensitive. He has money problems. He has romance problems. I said Carl was there. Son Charles was the prodigy of the family. He died just around age 14. He had already impressed people with his violin skills, and underneath all of this is a letter from home giving their congratulations that he was already playing the violin. The family was so happy that he was doing that. And here you can see, just going back to the tintype, in the studio you can get a fabulous backdrop like this. Some straw on the floor. Someone, maybe a child, has scribbled in different spellings of the name Schroeder here.
Hermann only has one end.
Yeah. Where did you see this?
Bottom.
Oh, wow. Good eyes, Carl. Well, Mr. Monbrower was failing in his proofreading skills. Let's go to the next one. More of these letters. I have to talk about the letters. Years ago, a cabin south of Missouri was being demolished. And a fellow was there, and he, in the attic, found a box of old letters. And he took them to Hermann at Deutschheim, and it turned out it was a box of letters about the Schroeder family. And I was so excited, and then Aaron left, and someone else was there, and I couldn't find them. And finally, Cindy was just looking for something else, and there they were, still in the original box. So here's another letter. This one is really lovely because it included lilies of valley violets and forget-me-nots grown in Johann Schroeder's greenhouse in Schwarzburg. The Germans obviously had no comprehension of the size of America. They expressed concern about forest fires in Wisconsin, thinking that they might, threaten Hermann. And then I just love this, the good old U.S. Post Office. This is addressed to Charles Schroeder, Hermann, Missouri, Gaston County, America. And it gets to him. So, many of the letters express concerns about debts and taxes and how bad things are in the old country. And I know Carl sent them money because a number of the letters provided thanks for, what was sent to them. So that might be another reason for his poverty. And here we go with some of that. As I said, R.C. Schlender got those lots, 50, 52, 54, and 56 East 3rd. In 1848, Schlender was a tanner from Hanover. Don't know why he would have wanted those, but he had them. Eventually, Schroeder is paying property tax, and it isn't until 1861 that he gets a deed to those lots from R.C. For $200. I question whether that $200 was ever received, because by 1877, a sheriff's sale was announced. And there you see the announcement that in favor of R.C. Schlender and against Carl Schroeder and Fritz Schroeder. I think Schlender, he didn't want to do this. There was a lot of time in between the actions that he took. But 1877, he just decided this is enough. And R.C. bought the land back for $122 and some cents. And at that time, that would have included all those buildings that Carl had constructed in the meantime. Carl apparently didn't leave. I'm sorry, I'm going between Carl and Charles. He was called Carl in Germany and Charles here for reasons that are beyond my understanding. RC files a petition for ejection. And Carl's still there in 1883. So I think he must have been a good guy. He sort of like Carl, couldn't figure out why he couldn't pay what he owed. But finally, Schroeder gets in gear and borrows more money, $175 from George Lang, a carpenter. And the document says it's loaned specifically for purchasing back the property. Schroeder turned that over to RC the same day, and a quitclaim deed was issued. So finally, in 1883, Carl gets the property he's been working on since the 1850s. I just recently found this, which is sort of sad. A note appeared in the Advertiser Courier that finally a pension is awarded to Carl in December of 1887. I have no idea why it would have taken that long to get his military pension, but it came a little late. I told you I had thoughts about Carl, and I think some of them are proved here. Charles Schroeder, old veteran, age 79, was found dead in his bed yesterday morning, having died of old age. The deceased was an old citizen of Hermann and very retired in his habits. He made his home with his son, Fritz Schroeder, who was his only child. The funeral will take place today under the auspices of the Grand Army Post, which he was a member. So I think he was very, very proud of his military service. I mentioned earlier, Carl, the grandson, died at 14. It was a really lovely obit. At the end, there's a sermon and then a mixed quartet of the Methodist Episcopal Church and the class of room 1 of the public school saying, "There is rest for the weary and Sabbath eve," respectively. The singing was very fine and touched the heartstrings of many hearers. Another terrible word. I'm sure this was hard on the family. And here we have the obit for Emily Schroeder, Fritz's wife, who had been ailing a long time and died at 52 years in 1907. So, all good things come to an end. The remaining son, John, played in the Enterprise Band, which didn't include strings. There is on the left. He also worked at the shoe factory. And someone pointed out, Cindy, that there were quite a few great children in this band. Monroe, Alex, and Oscar. So, the history of music in these families. If you were here for my last talk, I talked about Johann Blust, who lived on East Hill and did a lot of things in town, was on the board of trustees, grew grapes, participated in the construction of the Himmelstreppe, and then tied some rocks around his waist and walked into the Missouri River. You know, sad ending. But his children found their way, and one, Albert Blust, was the youngest child, ended up in Los Angeles making boot and shoe uppers and leather leggings. Another one of my favorite features of the West. Apparently they were quite popular in the West. These letters from Al start popping up in 1910, and I know Fritz most likely was feeling a little depressed. He was an artist. He made violins and accordions. If you went down to Monig's store, you could get a whole variety of accordions, and at some point, violins were only 5 cents. So you couldn't compete with that kind of situation. He'd also lost his beloved son Charles and his beloved wife so why not go to LA? And this wonderful photo was in that box of letters found in the attic of that demolished building. Just terrific. Mrs. Fritz F. Schroeder here. Here's another letter from Al, and this is a 4-page letter, and he tells him how great it is. He gets his breakfast downtown, 5 cents for coffee and 2 rolls, dinner 15 cents, sometimes 10. But you can live high here if you want to. This is my favorite. And I will make this prediction that in 2 years' time, you will say, if I would have known what I know now, I would have come out here 10 years ago. Now let me see if I'm right. We will have a good time together, we will play music, and Sundays we will go to the beach. And then again, Elsa helped me with the German translation down here where he talks about lovely maidens. And here are the lovely maidens that I'm singing. I put this here just because I thought it was such an interesting contrast. You have the young, dashing Fritz, probably in his 20s, the middle-aged family man in his 40s or 50s, and then you've got the dapper elder in his maybe 60s or 70s. So a remarkable family. Is there another slide?
Just back to the...
A remarkable family, and I think it made substantial contributions in and around Hermann with the stonework and the music. They're very little known today, but I'm happy to report that may change because the house is now the property of Jim and Mary Gerber, and I know they love the house, and I know they will restore it well, and I have plenty of material to provide interpretation. And before I conclude, I should bring this up, which Mary brought. This is a Schroeder violin. Look at this beauty. It was in the Schmidt family, and now it's in the hands of the Gerbers. And I won't try to. It's just amazing that he handmade these, and now, I guess they weren't imported from China back then, but I don't know who was manufacturing the ones that were 5 cents each. So this is terrific, and I think it's an excellent end to the story. And since we're celebrating Shakespeare, I might conclude that if music be the food of love, play on.
What kind of wood is it made out of?
I should know that. It's in my notes somewhere. I think there's some spruce and maple.
So it was local?
Mhm. Well, spruce. Yeah.
Probably cedar.
Yeah.
I think they probably.
I would imagine it was local. Any questions? Mary?
We bought this from Minnie Schmidt's daughter, and so I took it down to have it repaired at a fine shop in South St. Louis. And for those of you, I usually just watch for things for violins in the area. It was difficult to see, but if you look down in, it was a stamp. So it wasn't signed by hand and no paper label, but just a stamp. And he said it was quite expensive to redo it. So I said, what is this worth, you know, so, but he said it is a fine violin, not the finest, but it's a very fine violin, so he did a really good job. And I remember when Schmitz had owned that building, it was one of the buildings that a lot of you remember, they had tours at my fest during those days. And he had that still set up, and as Doc told us, that's kind of pretty much the way he left it. When he went to LA, do they think he just left that everything there and went?
You know, it's a Doc's accident. I never had a chance to really talk to him about all of these things, but as I understand it, he just left. And in one of the letters from his friend Al Blust, Al says, well, he knows pawn shops that have, you know, wonderful instruments. You can go there and buy instruments to sell and he did. He had a musical instrument shop on Crocker Street in LA. So I think he just pretty much started over. It's hard to imagine. And I don't know if it was left as though he just walked away or if that's the way Doc decorated so that it would look as though he just walked away. But the materials were there, the letters, the music.
But there are other Schroeder violins in town, and you just have to wonder how many families have violins that we had to use a really high intense flashlight, you know, to get he had to look in at an angle to see it. So I imagine they never planned to be famous. Like we think they're famous. I think they're famous.
Well, I don't know. He did what he did, and I think he hoped to be successful, but you know, didn't work out. And another point in fan ratings way, he says he always used a paper label. No, you're absolutely right. It was stamped, and I found that out accidentally when I dropped one of the violins, and I could clearly see the stamp on the inside. So, Bob?
You mentioned violins being sold for a nickel. What would he have expected, or what were they being sold for before these nickel violins came in? What was he getting for the violins he was making roughly? Does anybody know?
Well, one of the letters from Al Blust, he sent him $19 for an accordion. So, I'm sure they weren't hundreds of dollars, but if you think of 5 cents, during that period, the turn of the century, everything was going just really, really cheaply. I don't know if that was a holdover from the financial collapse of 1893 or just, I don't know what. As I said, I'm working on my little slice of Hermann. There's a much bigger world that could tell me more about these issues. We never get to that. John?
My grandfather, my uncle told me this, my grandfather bought a violin for $2.50.
Oh.
I remember him telling me that. I had it was left in the house on Dry Hill and pretty bad shape, really bad shape, but I still have it.
Wow.
And I had a question about it. My late uncle told me his father bought it for $2.50.
That gives us an idea.
Still a lot.
He wasn't rich. They weren't rich for all the good work they did. All your hands up again.
Does anybody have a recording when recording devices became available of someone playing one of Schroeder's violins?
I don't know. I discussed this issue with John Berkemeyer, whether they could play some of the music that's in Schroeder's hand, and he said, well, no, someone would have to annotate it because he's got one for the bass, one for the cornet, you know, and I sort of...
I was just thinking of sound quality, since as Mary said, this is a fine violin, but it's not a really fine, or whatever you
Well,
phrase
it's
it.
not
I just
an
wondered,
Amati, but
you know,
I think a lot of
quality was.
people did have them, or violins of that stripe.
More recently, the Sonny Buttermiller band, they had 2 violins in that band, I think. Do you remember the Buttermiller?
That Schroeder made?
I don't know if he made them, but I know he had violins in his band, two violins.
Cindy?
Well, Claire and I were talking too about, learning how did Fritz learn this, and it doesn't fit time-wise, but Carl Palmer was a trained violin maker in Philadelphia as well as pianofortes and guitars. We don't have any of his violins in the collection. There is a guitar at the Missouri History Museum, and we have a pianoforte at Deutschheim. And his sons were trained piano makers, so they also likely were trained in violin making as well. But they have moved to St. Louis by 1856, which is almost the same time when the Schroeders are coming here. But clearly there were craftsmen in Hermann who would have had those skill sets. And there was another piano maker from Saxony that was here that may have been an apprentice of the Palmers. And, we just really don't know how all this necessarily
And it had to happen because he was too young when he came to
Yeah, he would have
acquire
been a
those
child.
skills. He would have been a Mozart had he been playing at 4, but Stephanie, you got a hand up too.
Oh, you answered the question. I was just curious how the tools came into your possession after so long.
They were there. They were there. The stone, everything was the stoneworking tools, the violin pieces and parts and tools and the music, and it was just a little mini museum. I tried for a while to have it open during my fest when the Schweighausers and others were having their places open. We got very little visitation, and it cost quite a bit. I got friends to come up from Jeff City to help us docents, and we get 3 visitors. So I'm sure that'll be different now with your other activities going on. But
Was he the only violin maker, do you think, in Hermann?
he's the only one that I know of, but
There's none listed in the census as violin makers. There's ones listed as piano makers, but none that I'm aware of as violin makers in the census.
I know there were other people involved in instruments and instrumentation. Well, the Reeks and Louis Rincheball was, I believe, head of the Apostle String Band. So I think with the members, I hadn't realized until recently that the Apostle Band was a string band. And so there would have been, I think, a lot of opportunity to exchange skills and information if you have that many people so able to play those instruments that they were revered in town and other towns. So another research opportunity. Marcia?
What was the population of Hermann at that time?
Always hovered around about 2,000, hasn't it? Cindy, I need help here.
1850 was like 1,500, so yeah, it would have been gone up to about 2,000 after that, yeah. Probably wouldn't need more than one violin maker then. That's the reason we came out to St. Louis, because it wasn't a man's first pianoforte either.
And there's such an interest. Music was such an important part of the Germans' lives. Oh, and I remember Maureen Poe telling me Maureen and Bill lived in what's now the Iron Horse B&B on 5th, or is that 4th? Well, she remembers the Hobseekers. Emily, no, Bertha, the daughter of Fritz and Emily Schroeder, married Adolf Hobseeker, and they lived in that house. And I just remember Maureen talking about hearing wonderful music coming down below from the Hobseekers on the back 40 just playing, which is really wonderful memory. So it would have been fascinating time, Jim.
Kitchen was that like a stone house. The stone parts of the first on that side of the stone house.
I wish I knew the answer to this. It's a small building. It's divided in half. One half is just open. It has the ventilation holes and the poles where you could hang things, but I don't think they used it as a smokehouse because there's no evidence that fires were burned in there. The other side has it has a brick bench with 2 metal cauldrons, small ones, set into that brick bench, and below the little iron grates, and you can put your wood in there and heat up the kettles. I They also had fruit trees. I thought, well, maybe they pressed cider, maybe they made apple butter. I really don't know. They didn't, the census never showed that Carl had livestock other than the cow. So I don't think he was doing sausages.
Building that's come on.
It's a question. Well, family legend says they lived there first while he was building the rest, but well, it's outer and say under that upper building there is a cellar, and at the end of the cellar there is a stone niche and a chimney up above, so they could have cooked there. That seems more convenient than the other place, but I just don't know. Anytime I garden or go outside, I collect my little archaeology pieces. I'm a little OCD. I have them all in little plastic bags just to see how many different crocks they had. They had a lot of different crocks, so they were something. I haven't figured out that puzzle. Another research topic.
So normally do you do your stone work outside with just a roof, but there's no roof?
I would think so.
You haven't found where that is?
And I know the house, as I explained, sits in a hill. You've got a hill up here, and then the house is, he would have had to dig that out to create the house. And I'm thinking, well, maybe, I'm pretty much on bedrock. Maybe that's how I got a lot of the stone, by quarrying right there. I don't know, but I think it would have been done outside.